Alright, so this video is going to be a little bit harder than the last video. We're going to have to look at different forms and find different things from them. So we have f of x equals negative parentheses x minus 3 squared plus 25. This is vertex form, so we'll easily be able to find our vertex, but we'll have to work through to find our zeros. Okay, so our vertex form is a parentheses, I'll put f of x equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus the k value. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite our equation right underneath it, hopefully, or to the side. Let's see here. There we go, right underneath it. Equals negative, open parentheses, x minus 3. So our h value is going to be 3 squared plus 25, and our k value is going to be 25. Looks like I wrote k instead of 25. Come on, put 25 there. 3 comma, there you go, you'll see it. There we go, erase that k. There you go. Put 25. There we go. All right, there we go. 3 comma 25. So that's our vertex, 3 and 25. But now we have to find our smaller 0 and our larger 0, which basically means we got to set f of x equal to 0 equals negative, open parentheses, x minus 3, close parentheses, squared, plus 25. So we're going to solve for our x using the square root properties. We're going to take away 25 from both sides. Just like that. And when you take away 25 from both sides, you're left with negative 25 equals negative, open parentheses, x minus 3, close parentheses, squared. All right. Now those negatives are going to cancel each other out. So basically, if you multiply or divide both sides by a negative, they cancel out. So I'm going to rewrite it as just positive 25 equals, open parentheses, x minus 3, close parentheses, squared. And then here's what you're going to see me do. You're going to see me take the square root property, which basically means you got to take the square root of both sides of the equal sign. So here we go. Taking the square root of this and taking the square root of this. But whenever you're solving an equation and you're taking the square root, that 25 is actually going to become plus or minus 5. Because a positive 5 times a positive 5 is 25, and a negative 5 times a negative 5 is also 25. That's why I have to do plus or minus. But on the left-hand side, you just bring down the x minus 3 right there. And we're down to one last final step, which is add 3 to both sides. So how do I get two answers out of that? Well, x is going to end up equaling a positive 5 plus 3 and a negative 5 plus 3. So here we go. x equals positive 5 plus 3 and negative 5 plus 3. 5 plus 3 is 8, and negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2. And there's our two answers. All right, so I'm going to plug in right here. What's our smaller one? Negative 2. What's our larger one? Positive 8. And those are all of my final answers. So I'll type in a negative 2, positive 8, and the vertex, which is at a 3 and a 25. And boom, got it right. All right, now the next one's actually in factored form, okay? So in factored form, what you have to do is basically you're finding what values make it equal to 0. So you can clearly see, that we are in factored form. All right, which is x plus 9 and x plus 8. And now I'm writing down the numbers, like what number plus 9 equals 0, and that's negative 9. And what number plus 8 equals 0, and that's negative 8. And that's what factored form allows you to be able to do. But how do we find our vertex in factored form? Well, basically, the vertex is always going to be perfectly halfway between the two zeros. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take negative 8, I'm going to add negative 9 together, and then I'm just going to divide them by 2. So we get negative 17 over 2, which is negative 8.5. And that's actually going to be the axis of symmetry as well, if it asked us for the axis of symmetry, because that's going to pass through the vertex. Okay? So, what am I going to do now? Now that I have my two zeros, which is negative 9 and negative 8, I'm going to take that negative 8.5 and I'm going to plug it into our equation. So I'm going to put negative 8.5 right there, negative 8.5 plus 9, negative 8.5 plus 8. All right, and so all we're going to do is we're going to get a positive half, and then we're going to end up getting a negative half when we add those together, and then we're going to multiply a positive half times a negative half, and we get negative 1/4, which is negative 0.25. All right, and so I'm going to put negative 0.25. Negative 0.25. All right, and so that's going to be our vertex. Now, I'm going to also write negative 17/2 and negative 1/4, and that's how I'm going to type it into the Khan Academy, because I want you to know that it still accepts improper fractions as well as decimals. Okay? So, right here, I'm going to type it in so you can clearly see the process. There's the x plus 9. There's the x plus 8. You can clearly see that it goes through our zeros right there of negative 9 and negative 8. Okay? And x equals negative 8.5 passes perfectly right there through the vertex. And I'm probably going to zoom in a little bit. There we go, zoom it in, boom. Negative 8.5 and negative 0.25. Alright? Which gives me confidence to type this into the Khan Academy knowing that we did all of the math correctly. Alright, there's my zeros, negative 9, negative 8. There's my axis of symmetry, negative 8.5, by adding the two zeros together and dividing by 2. The average of my zeros is the axis of symmetry. I plug it in, I got negative 1/4. Let's go and type it in. Smaller zero, negative 9. Larger zero, negative 8. What's the vertex of the parabola? Negative 17/2. Alright, and negative 1/4. Alright, let's type it in. Hit check, come on. You know you got it right, come on. Alright, let's hit the next question here. Last question, here we go. What are the zeros of the function? Well, right now this function is in standard form. Okay? And so it's in ax squared plus bx plus c form. And it's asking us to find the smaller zero, the larger zero, and the vertex. And really the only thing that form gives us is the y-intercept. So what we're going to do is I'm going to factor this guy and allow us to find our zeros. Because right now it's an ax squared plus bx plus c form. And it really doesn't give us the vertex or the zeros. We've got to do a little factoring to give us our zeros. All right? And we're also going to find the vertex. All right? So here we go. We're looking for two numbers that add up to 3 but multiply together to equal negative 4. And those two numbers are going to be 4 and negative 1, because 4 times negative 1 is negative 4, and 4 plus negative 1 is 3. So we're going to factor this guy to x plus 4 and x minus 1. All right? So what number plus 4 equals 0? That would be negative 4. And what number minus 1 equals 0? Well, that's positive 1. So our smaller 0 is negative 4, and our larger 0 is positive 1. So just by factoring that allows us to find it. Now remember, do you remember how we found the axis of symmetry? It's going to be negative b over 2a. And so we use standard form to be able to do that. So our a value is going to be 1, our b value is going to be 3, and our c value is going to be negative 4. A value is 1 because it's 1x squared. B value is 3. C value is negative 4. All right? So we're going to do negative b, which is negative 3 over 2 times our a value, which is 1. So we get negative 3 over 2. So that's our axis of symmetry. All right, so negative 3 over 2. Now we're going to take that, and you'll notice, look at what's negative 4 plus 1 all divided by 2. What's the average of our two zeros? Negative 4 plus 1 all over 2. That's also negative 3 over 2. All right, so that's the x value of our vertex. So we're going to take that, plug it in there, and that'll be all we have to do. So here we go, open parentheses. There we go, squared plus 3, open parentheses, minus 4. So we're going to take that negative 3 over 2, plug it right in, right there. So we're going to get we get positive 9 over 4, because a negative times a negative is a positive. Then we're going to get negative 9 over 2 minus 4. Now, to do this by hand, we got to change all of the denominators to 4. So we're going to do 9 over 4, then we're going to double the numerator and the denominator to make it negative 18 over 4. Then we're going to multiply that by a 4 over a 4, and that's going to make it negative 16 over 4, because negative 16 divided by 4 is negative 4. Then we just do 9 minus 18, which is negative 9, minus 16 over 4, and that gets us negative 25 over 4. And that's going to be the y value for our vertex. All right, so we're going to type it in. There we go. I'm showing you guys basically how you would type it into the Desmos to get your answer. All right. There, negative 3 over 2. That's how you would type it in if you weren't doing it by hand. And then we're going to put minus 4. You see that negative 6.25 hit the fraction. Boom. Negative 25 over 4. So that's how you would type it into Desmos if you needed some help. All right. Negative 25 over 4. Going to write that in. All right. So we've got our smaller 0. All right. We factored it. We got our negative 4 and 1. Then we found our smaller and larger 0. Then all we did was used x equals negative b over 2a. We plugged in our values, got negative 3 over 2, and then took that information and plugged it back into the equation to get our y value for our vertex. We plugged it in there and there, and got negative 25 over 4. Smaller 0. Negative 4, buddy. Smaller 0 is negative 4. Come on. There you go. Negative 4. And our vertex is negative 3 over 2 and negative 25 over 4. Trust yourself here. Trust yourself. Trust yourself. Come on. Hit check. Hit check. You know you want to. Boom. There you go. So this is going to be a little bit harder assignment because you have to know how to factor by hand. You have to know how to find which one's standard form, which one's factored form, and which one is, there's your factored form right there. And then you have your vertex form right there. So those are the 3 different forms that you need to know in order to be successful. All right? Hope you have a good day.